I'm still playing at 37 years old because of it. That's quite a statement, isn't it? From Tim Rem, Pro Football Defender.
It really is.
And he's talking about, well, it's Pilates, specifically on the reformer machine.
Yeah, which I think for many people sounds, well, a bit strange maybe, linking something like Pilates, often seen as quite gentle, with, the sheer intensity of professional football.
Exactly. It seems like an odd match.
Yeah.
But that's precisely what we're diving into today, right?
Absolutely. We're looking at this really interesting and growing link between Pilates, the method people might associate more with dancers or maybe rehab, and the high-impact world of elite football.
And we're drawing heavily on a fantastic discussion we had with Caroline Berger from Fémynie.
Well,
she's a real expert in Pilates and athletic performance.
She really is. Her insights were invaluable for this.
So our goal here, our mission, is to really unpack how Pilates deals with what Caroline calls the invisible wear, that kind of hidden breakdown in players.
That's the perfect term for it. Invisible wear. Because when you actually look at what football does to a player's body day in, day out, it starts to make a lot more sense.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got the obvious stuff, like the constant repeated impacts, right? The collisions. But also, think about how players almost always favor one leg.
Yeah, the dominant kicking leg, for instance.
Exactly. That creates a huge natural imbalance over time. It's called lateralization. Plus, you have those incredibly fast changes of direction, the twisting, the rotating.
So the body's always working asymmetrically, basically, pulled in different directions.
Constantly. And all of that adds up. It creates these really deep imbalances, not just surface muscle soreness, but a kind of profound structural imbalance and a fatigue that creeps in silently.
Ah, okay. So it builds up without you really noticing until maybe it's too late.
Precisely. And this is where Pilates comes in. As Caroline stressed, it's not about just adding more muscle bulk onto an already stressed system. It's fundamentally about rebalancing, re-educating the body to counteract those specific lopsided demands of football.
Okay, so correcting the effects of the sport itself. That's interesting. How does it actually do that? Caroline mentioned 3 core ideas or pillars: precision, stability, and respiration.
That's right. Precision, stability, and respiration. She talks about Pilates as a kind of postural reorganization, almost like counter-programming the body.
Counter-programming. How so?
Well, think about those compensation patterns footballers develop because they're always using one side more, that lateralization we talked about. Pilates actively works against those habits. It tries to reset the balance.
And this connects to that phrase she used, fine neuromuscular reading. That sounds intriguing. What is that exactly?
It's a fantastic phrase, isn't it? It basically means getting really, really specific about how the body moves. It's about waking up those small, deep, stabilizing muscles.
The tiny ones.
Yeah, the ones right near the joints that are absolutely crucial for support. But they can kind of go dormant when the bigger muscles take over to compensate for imbalances.
Ah, I see. So the big guys do the work, and the little stabilizers get lazy.
Sort of, yeah. So Pilates focuses on reactivating them. And it's about restoring balance in the pelvis, engaging the deep core muscles, the pelvic floor, which is just fundamental for any kind of efficient, powerful movement.
Okay, getting that foundation super solid first.
Exactly. And then it's about coordinating the connections across the body, the muscle chains, sometimes called the diagonals of force.
Right, like when you swing your arm and kick with the opposite leg.
Precisely. You use those diagonals constantly in football, striking the ball, changing direction explosively. If those deep stabilizers aren't working or the diagonals aren't firing in the right sequence, you leak power, you lose stability, you increase injury risk.
That kind of deep diagnosis, the fine reading, sounds like it could lead to some pretty dramatic results. I think the source mentioned a player struggling with pubalgia.
Oh, absolutely. That pubalgia story is a perfect example of this fine reading in practice. This player, he was basically out. Tried everything, traditional physio, treatments, you name it. Nothing was working.
And he was probably thinking his season was done for.
Completely. Then he had just one session on a Pilates reformer.
Just one?
Yeah. And apparently that single session was enough to pinpoint the real underlying issue. It wasn't just a muscle problem. It was an unconscious instability in his pelvis, specifically happening right at the moment he planted his standing foot.
Wow. So like just before kicking or pushing off.
Exactly. A hidden instability that, the standard methods just hadn't identified.
Because they weren't looking at that level of detail.
Probably not, or the tools weren't quite right. But the Pilates approach, especially with the feedback from the reformer machine, allowed for that fine reading. Once they saw that specific instability, they could target the rehab work precisely.
And the recovery was quick.
Incredibly quick, apparently. Astonished the player. It just shows how addressing the root cause, that hidden imbalance, can make all the difference.
Which brings us neatly back to the reformer machine itself. It seems central to this whole approach. You mentioned Tim Rem has one at home. Odell Beckham Jr. in the NFL uses Pilates equipment too.
Yeah, the reformer really is a key piece of the puzzle here. What makes it special is its spring system. It gives you resistance, but it's a controlled, adjustable resistance that constantly challenges your stability while you move.
So it forces your body to work harder to stay stable.
Exactly. It facilitates what's called dynamic adjustment. Your body has to keep making these tiny micro corrections to control the movement against the springs.
And why is that so valuable for a footballer? What does it train?
Well, for one, it's brilliant for teaching your body to dissociate the hip from the pelvis. Think about kicking.
Yeah.
You are a powerful leg movement, but you need your core and pelvis to be rock solid, right?
Right, for power and balance.
The reformer really helps train that separation, that control. It also massively improves your stability when you're standing on one leg, which footballers do constantly.
All the time, yeah.
And crucially, the machine gives you instant direct feedback. You feel immediately if you start to wobble or compensate. You become aware of your own movement patterns.
So it's teaching you how to move correctly under load, not just getting stronger.
Precisely. It's very precise motor learning. The source mentioned a couple of specific exercises like fit-in straps. This works the dep hip flexors, super important for sprinting, kicking.
Okay.
But it trains them without letting you cheat by arching your lower back, which is a really common compensation that leads to problems.
Oh, yeah, you see that arching everywhere.
Right. And another one, leg pull front. It helps engage the hamstrings functionally, preparing them for things like pushing off powerfully, but again, without putting excessive stress on the joints. It teaches the muscle to work as part of an integrated system.
That sounds incredibly sophisticated. Are teams actually using this?
Oh, yeah. It's definitely growing. The source mentioned teams like Earthfield Zagreb in Australia, and even NFL teams like the Kansas City Chiefs are using reformers.
The Chiefs, wow. What for?
For things like improving ankle stability, hip mobility, even helping their huge linemen develop a more solid base, a better anchor.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crossing over into really high-level, high-impact sports.
Fascinating. Okay, so that covers the physical precision and stability. But pillar number 3 was respiration, breathing. That feels maybe less obviously connected to football performance than core strength.
You'd think so, maybe, but it's actually fundamental. It really bridges the physical and the mental aspects. Pilates uses a specific technique, lateral thoracic breathing.
Lateral thoracic, what's that?
It means breathing into the sides and back of your rib cage, expanding sideways, rather than just shallow breathing up in the chest or pushing the belly way out.
Okay. And how does breathing into your ribs help a footballer on the pitch?
It has several really important benefits. First, it helps to liberate the diaphragm. Athletes, especially under stress, can get a really tight diaphragm, which limits breathing capacity.
Right.
It also helps release tension in the neck and shoulders, the cervical area. That tension often comes from stress, fatigue, maybe even heading the ball or impacts.
Okay, so less physical tension, better breathing mechanics.
Yeah.
Makes sense. What else?
Well, better breathing means better oxygenation for the muscles. Vital for endurance, for recovery between bursts of effort. But maybe the biggest impact is mental.
Mental. So
It improves mental clarity, focus, composure under pressure. Carolyn shared a quote from a player who said, "About focusing on this breathing, I see clearer."
I see clearer. Wow. In the middle of a chaotic, fast-paced game. That kind of mental sharpness, that ability to stay calm and make good decisions, that must be huge.
It can absolutely be a difference maker. Making that crucial pass, anticipating the play, it requires focus.
So this sounds really advanced. Is Pilates mainly for the elite pros or maybe players coming back from injury?
That's a common thought, but actually one of its big advantages is its versatility. Caroline emphasized it's beneficial across the board.
For younger players, too.
Definitely. For kids and youth players, it's fantastic for building fundamental coordination, good posture, body awareness. It can help prevent some common issues related to growth spurts, building those good movement habits early.
Right. Setting a good foundation.
Exactly. Then in the elite level, like we've been saying, it's about that surgical precision, finding that extra 1%, that competitive edge. and post-injury. It's ideal. It allows for really gentle, controlled reathleticism.
Getting back safely.
Yes, and it works a lot on neuroplasticity, basically retraining the brain-muscle connection after it's been disrupted by injury or time off, helping the brain relearn the correct way to move.
The source described it as silent but transformational.
I think that sums it up perfectly. It's not loud, it's not flashy, but the changes can be really deep.
So just to be clear, Pilates isn't meant to replace traditional strength training or the cardio work footballers do.
Not at all. It's a complement. It slots in alongside everything else.
And what does it add specifically?
It refines things. It sharpens proprioception. That's your sense of where your body parts are in space without looking. It reinforces that deep core stability we talked so much about. And it improves movement endurance, the ability to maintain good form and efficient movement patterns for longer, which helps fight fatigue and reduce injury risk late in games.
It really sounds like it gives players a much deeper, more intimate understanding of their own bodies, like better self-knowledge.
That's probably the biggest overall benefit, yeah. A much finer awareness of how they move, how to control it, how to adjust it. And, if you're listening and feeling skeptical about all this,
Yeah.
Caroline's advice was pretty simple. Just try it. Find a properly qualified instructor, do a real session, especially maybe on a reformer if you can. She felt the actual experience, feeling those deep muscles switch on. Getting that immediate feedback is often way more convincing than just talking about it.
The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Experience it yourself.
Exactly.
Okay, so wrapping this up. The big takeaway seems to be that football hinges on these critical moments, these split-second actions. And Pilates helps prepare the body to be more stable, more efficient, maybe even smarter in those moments.
Making those moments count, yeah. And as Tim Rem found, that can genuinely help extend a demanding career.
It really challenges the old idea that the most important muscle in football is, the quad or the calf.
Right. Maybe the most important muscle is actually this highly developed body consciousness, this refined control and awareness.
Body consciousness.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way to frame it. And it leaves you with a thought, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If developing this really fine awareness of movement and internal stability can have such a profound impact in a sport like football, which is so incredibly demanding and asymmetrical. Well, how could cultivating a similar kind of intimate understanding of our own bodies, how they move, how they hold tension, how they respond to stress, how could that potentially change things in other areas of our lives? Situations where maybe our bodies or even our minds are under different kinds of pressure or constraint.
That's a great question. Definitely something to think about.